Welcome. I'm Ted Sheriff, Park Manager of Quail Hollow State Park. Quail Hollow State Park, in conjunction with the Quail Hollow Volunteer Association, recognizing a need for greater public awareness of the declining condition of our natural environment, hosted a roundtable discussion on environmental values. Experts in many areas of environmental study were invited to the park to offer presentations covering a wide range of interests pertaining to various topics of our natural world and our human role in it. The following program is one in a series to emerge from that discussion. Hello and welcome to our roundtable discussion of environmental values. Welcome to Quail Hollow State Park. And I truly want to welcome you to Quail Hollow State Park. It's a pleasure to do so. And Quail Hollow State Park, briefly, is a little different type park for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and we're real pleased that it is. It fills a special niche in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and has a very particular focus. And some of you may know the park well. Some of you may have noticed on your visit here today, on your entrance, that you didn't see the typical lake and campground and so on. And that's part of that special niche and special theme of this state park. It is devoted to the educational study and appreciation of our outdoor world. And as a part of our pursuit of that theme, we are real pleased to have you here today with us for a roundtable discussion on environmental values, which will be sociologically oriented, should be applicable, should have something for every one of you, if not many things, to think about and take home and perhaps live out, we hope, in the future. There's a number of deserving thank yous which I wish to extend before we open the actual discussion portion. And I want to first of all thank the other half of the steering committee, perhaps first and foremost, for a great deal of devotion and hard work in presenting this and bringing it together. And you'll be seeing her throughout the day, and that's Park Naturalist Barbara Fiocca. Would you raise?
That we welcome Nancy Wickemeyer from CREW, and it stands for the Center for Reproduction of Endangered Wildlife. And it's based in Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden in Cincinnati. There's only very few places in the entire world that do the type of things that Nancy will tell us about today. And she is CREW's spokesperson for Dr. Betsy Dresser, who is Director of Research at the Cincinnati Zoo. Nancy has traveled twice on safari to Africa, and it could be more than that since I talked with her, and once to China under the leadership of Dr. Betsy Dresser. So welcome, Nancy Wickemeyer.
At the Cincinnati Zoo, we have the world's foremost research center of its kind, named CREW, as Barbara has told you. CREW is an acronym for the Center for Reproduction of Endangered Wildlife. Now, the biblical Noah's Ark represents the original response, probably, of man to an environmental catastrophe. Noah, in his famed effort to save the genetic diversity, may have been our first conservationist. The modern-day building here, or Noah's Ark, has a brand new home. CREW is a state-of-the-art facility, opened in June of 1991. This Lindner Family Jr. Center for Reproduction of Endangered Wildlife is an 18,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility, a survival center containing the most advanced equipment for plant and animal research. The entire center is unique because it is dedicated to the propagation and the preservation of wildlife with areas designed for public education. The role of research in zoos has become prominent only in the last decade, as it has become increasingly obvious that zoos may provide the last refuge for some species who are losing their homes in the wild due to population explosions, poaching, pollution, human ignorance, and greed. CREW offers innovative approaches to saving genetic diversity. Of course, our modern-day Noah is female. Dr. Betsy Dresser, originator and director of CREW, is a brilliant animal reproductive physiologist. She and her staff have achieved world acclaim in innovative assisted reproductive technologies. In 1981, Dr. Dresser joined forces with the Kings Island Wild Animal Habitat and the UC College of Medicine. Our CREW logo, recognize it? Designed by Charlie Harper, brilliantly symbolizes CREW's goals. You will find it everywhere, on mugs, T-shirts, bumper stickers, our pamphlets, and we live by it. Our goals are to preserve and propagate plant and animal species that are at risk of extinction, and 2, to set standards and cooperative agreements with other institutions worldwide, and 3, to provide a central focus for efforts that will one day link international conservation programs, and 4, to provide scientific education and information services to all interested individuals and organizations. But simplistically, our logo sums it up. The red life preserver encircles the rare endangered bongo and the trillium plant, representatives of both the plant and animal conservation divisions. And a third division, education, is chaired by Dr. Brad Bonham and myself. The Animal Conservation Division, under the head of Dr. Earl Pope, is best known for its work in embryo transfer. We are no longer confident that natural breeding alone will be enough to save many of our endangered species. So a combination of in the field and in the laboratory work is a hope for the future. In embryo transfer, we borrowed an idea from the dairy industry, which they had been using for profit for about 50 years. But we now are applying this idea to save the numbers and raise the birth rates of endangered animals. This procedure of embryo transfer offers a tremendous potential. On the wall of the public exhibit, as you come into the CREW building, you see some portraits of some animals in our family album of embryo transfers of wild animals. I'd like to show you a few of them. Here's our first one, little E.T., named for embryo transfer. The world's first exotic animal to be born from a non-surgically transferred embryo. This baby eland was born in 1983 and is now a grandmother herself, proof that these are viable animals. The world's first continental embryo transfer with exotics occurred a little later. Bongo embryos were collected from the Los Angeles Zoo and were flown here, as a matter of fact, in a little vial taped under Dr. Dresser's arm. And this represents the first transcontinental embryo transfer. The amazing thing about this picture is that little TC for transcontinental, standing here with her mom, Parquet, has a biological mother who is 2,500 miles away at the Los Angeles Zoo. A few days later, another one of those embryos was born, and this is little L.A. DeLay, standing with her surrogate eland mother, a miraculous interspecies transfer, proving that we can use common animals to help us save our endangered and rare ones. This is a scimitar horned oryx, a threatened relative of the Arabian oryx, extinct in the wild. This was the first embryo transfer done on this species of animal, and our hope is to use this animal as a surrogate for the Arabian oryx somewhere down the line. In 1987, Alice, the Holstein cow, gave birth to an Indian gaur named Ralph. This was a milestone research because an exotic species had been transferred successfully by a non-surgical process to a domestic. By the way, in that last picture, Alice did raise and nurse that baby. Our first litter of embryo transfer cats. Some people wonder why use domestic cats. We have 60 in our program. Domestic cats can serve as a valuable surrogate for some of the smaller endangered exotic felines, such as the leopard cat, the margay, the ocelot, the golden cat, to name just a few, because their size is very similar. Saving germplasm by freezing eggs, sperm, and embryo is called cryopreservation. We can hold these seeds for the future in a modern-day frozen ark indefinitely, a real genetic treasure chest. Storage tanks of liquid nitrogen supply the square holding tank there in the middle. Germplasm is held at -383 degrees Fahrenheit as the seeds for the future on the right are stored in the frozen garden. We can, as Dr. Dresser often states, literally keep a species from going extinct by using this technology. And yet this technology is only in its infancy. This is not a cure-all. It is just an emergency room for endangered animals. How do they do that? Well, here's a few procedures. Semen collection, shown here on a margay cat. This procedure is known as electroejaculation. Semen collection must be evaluated and prepared for in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, or cryopreservation. There are many, many intricate steps to be taken successfully for the preparation of all germplasm, and each species requires a different protocol and a different medium. Once prepared in tiny straws labeled in canes, they can be lowered into liquid nitrogen, as you see here, thawed and transferred to a surrogate. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself here. We have 500 species represented here. Meet Bergie, one of the cats that came from that tank, and her embryo was thawed and frozen and thawed, and transferred to a surrogate. This is our first frozen thawed embryo in the world, little Frosty, standing here with her surrogate mother. The miracle of Frosty is that Frosty was in that tank in a tiny straw, which looks similar. Well, this is one of the canes in the straws. And if you could imagine an animal surviving in a tiny straw like this for a year and a half, being frozen for a year and a half, and then was thawed and transferred into the surrogate who produced this wonderful baby. The potential for this is that we could keep a troop of gorillas, a herd of antelope, a litter of tigers alive indefinitely until man can find better means of providing habitats for them. We have the animals now here on Earth. If we wait too long, they will be gone. Micromanipulation is another tool we're using. And in this tool, we must split an embryo the size of a speck of dust with a micro tool the size of a strand of hair. The results are cloning or identical twins. The first animal to result from this at Crew was Little Ditto, which proved that one embryo split in half can provide a viable youngster. However, the other half did not take, but that's research, not always 100% success. In vitro fertilization is another tool we use. It's a valuable Crew procedure, and it produced the first in vitro fertilized kittens. Here's little Vitro in the foreground, and Ivy, who resides at my house. These kittens were born in 1988. The in vitro fertilization method is very important because this methodology developed on these domestic cats paved the way for an exciting event which made world history when in 1989, Desi, a domestic cat, gave birth to an Indian desert cat named Noah. Larger endangered animals currently being studied at Crew include Rosie, a lowland gorilla. and she's a known good breeder who has produced offspring, as you see her here with one of them. By learning the secrets of the gorilla's reproductive physiology, methods of artificial insemination can be applied to the many gorillas who will not reproduce. A sonogram here at Crew on Rosie this year was a first step in learning the mysteries of the female gorilla's reproductive tract. Laparoscopy. The Ethon Endosurgery Company, a Cincinnati-based company, has helped Crew tremendously by teaching laparoscopy techniques and generously donating equipment. The monitor screen that you see up there in the top of the picture enables the doctors as well as visitors to view the procedure. And this is a terrific educational aid for visitors who come through our building on tours and can actually see through a glass window what we are doing. A very rare Indo-Chinese tiger female is prepared for laparoscopy, a less invasive surgery, where sperm from our male tiger was collected this very morning and injected directly into the uterine horn of this female. The dustbuster comes in handy for removing shaved hair. There are only 4 of these Corbetti or Indo-Chinese tigers in America. We have 2 females and a male at our zoo. This female refused to mate with the male because of a poor attitude, so Crew had to help out. Endangered Puerto Rican crested toads. Crew applied hormones to superovulate Mama on the right, who happens to be the larger of the 2, and she produced 700 eggs in a cluster on her back, and immediately Papa jumped up on top and fertilized them. Shortly thereafter, 700 toadlets soon resulted. Perhaps the Puerto Rican crested toad is no longer endangered. We returned 200 of these animals back into their native habitat in Puerto Rico. The rest were sent to zoos for continued work. Now, the Plant Conservation Division, under the head of Dr. Valerie Pence, began in 1986. Using some technologies from agricultural research, Pence's goal is to apply them to unstudied wild plants, and it's a challenge to save both the fauna and the flora. Amazingly, many of the approaches and biotechnologies are similar to the animal work. Here is Trillium grandiflorum, and it's an Ohio flower, one of several Trillium species, some of which in Ohio are endangered, and some Trillium species are internationally endangered. The reason for our research with Trillium is that they're slow growing. In vitro tissue collection propagation can speed up the plant's life cycle. Cloning or cutting tiny pieces, and then in a petri dish, they grow little nodules, which can then be transferred as a test tube plant, which I have up here, if any of you would like to take a look at it. Roots and shoots develop, and this can eventually be taken into the soil. Embryos can be removed from recalcitrant nut seeds, such as the chestnut in Ohio, and they can be frozen. Oak embryos have also been successfully frozen. And royal catchfly, which is a rare prairie flower in the middle there. You can barely see it. It's a red flower growing right through the middle. A milestone for the plant division occurred when they froze the embryos from this cacao tree, or the chocolate plant, a very recalcitrant tropical plant, and a model for all other endangered tropicals. These immature pods from the cacao were successfully frozen. Pods were donated by the Hershey Company. And here we have living proof in this regenerated cacao plant that we will have chocolate forever. How better could anyone serve society? Ohio endangered plants thrive in a temperature and light-controlled greenhouse along with other tropicals. Significant progress with Ohio plants was made possible by a grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, 230 Ohio genera were tested, and our seed bank, which resides in the Crew Plant Lab, now has 63 seeds listed as endangered. Visitors to Crew are able to look into the greenhouse through a large glass window and learn from displays and videos and graphics the actual work going on there. Another glass window reveals close-up some studies that are going on with the lowly mosses, liverworts, ferns, and other small plants. Even the Ohio buckeye, as a test tube baby here, is relatively insignificant, except for the fact that it's our state symbol, and it could someday become endangered. So we're working on that. Crew also depends on about 90 dedicated volunteers who perform services ranging from cracking nuts, as you see here, to doing procedures, to giving interpretive talks, and to going out to schools with our messages. So we've added an international scope to our Crew logo. And we've put out routes for satellite stations in Costa Rica, Belize, Indonesia, Beijing, Germany, Trinidad, and Kenya. But the Kenya Bongo project has captured the attention of the conservation community. After 7 years of research, Dr. Dresser and her team have embarked on an international conservation project to reintroduce the bongo into the Mount Kenya region where it has become extinct. The first phase was completed when Crew non-surgically transferred, in this very picture here, embryos to an eland at the William Holden Wildlife Game Ranch in Kenya, which is co-owned by movie star and conservationist Stephanie Powers. She is a valuable Crew supporter. An animal orphanage includes a group of captive bongo listed there. You can see some in the background. Dr. Richard Leakey, head of the Kenya Wildlife Service, joined Dr. Dresser in January and has assisted in the planning, and he gives Dr. Dresser his powerful support. Unfortunately, he was involved in a plane accident shortly after this picture was taken and has now lost one leg. Phase 2 will be a world-first international exchange of frozen bongo embryos brought from Cincinnati to Kenya to enhance the genetic diversity there. In Phase 3, wild eland, as you see here from an aerial view, will be captured for embryo transfer. And they will be released back into the wild to hopefully give birth to bongo calves for a gradual reintroduction into their native home. Global germplasm banks and international embryo exchange may give some species the edge they need to survive. Victor Hugo said, "Where the telescope ends, the microscope begins. Who is to say which is the better view?" Saving wildlife is not just about saving bongo and tropical plants. It's about our connection to all of our environment and society in which we live. Crew has hosted international workshops to share our knowledge and techniques. Dr. Dresser says, we want to actually be a center where conservationists, students, and the public and scientists can come and see and learn and exchange ideas. And finally, Crew will continue its mission in hope of saving a diversity of wildlife before the sun sets for the last time on another species of animals gone extinct. There are some pamphlets over on the table over there, and you're welcome to take one if you will. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. We hope you'll join us again when we present the next segment of a roundtable discussion on environmental values.